So, good morning, students of class 12. Today, we are going to take up the next poem in our syllabus, and the name of the poem is We Are the Music Makers, which is an ode written by Arthur William Edgar O'Shaughnessy. Now, on your screen, you can see the photograph of the poet Arthur William Edgar O'Shaughnessy. He was, if you look into your workbooks, you will find that he was born in London on 14th of March 1844, and he was basically a British poet, but he was originally from Ireland. So his name is suggestive of the fact that he has an Irish origin. Now, this is an ode which celebrates, or rather which speaks in volumes about musicians, artists, singers, dancers, performers, instrumentalists. So it is an ode, you can say, addressed to such people who entertain us, and it celebrates the activities of the artists. Now, if we take a quick look at the background of the poem, we can say that this ode is popularly known by its first line, "We are the music makers," and it is the first poem in the collection Music and Moonlight, which was published in 1874 by the poet. So this ode is actually a treatise, as I told you, to artists across different realms. It uses various euphemisms like music makers, dreamers of dreams. These phrases are euphemistic phrases, movers and shakers, to implore the artists and to sing about their achievements. It describes the life of an artist, the beauty of the artist's artworks, and the impact of the artists on their surroundings and on the world outside. So, this poem is the origin of the popular phrase movers and shakers, although the original version has 9 stanzas in total. If you look into the net, if you search it in Google, you will find that the original poem has 9 stanzas, but it is believed that only the 3 stanzas which are prescribed for you in your syllabus, these are the most significant ones and have a big impact and bring out the essence of the poem. Now, a question might arise in your mind as to what an ode is. So, before we begin with the poem, We Are the Music Makers by Arthur O'Shaughnessy, let me tell you that an ode is a particular kind of poetry in which the poet is found addressing someone. Addressing someone could be a human being, could be a non-human, could be an element of nature, could be an animal or a bird or an object, but it seems like a call being given by the poet to someone. So that is how it is an ode. Now on your screen, once again, I have zoomed in to show you something which is very significant with regard to this poem. You can see there are 2 masks. Now these masks are actually worn by those who are performers. So they hide their true faces and wear the masks to entertain us. You have seen Kathakali dancers, for example, in India, who put on certain face gear. They cover up their faces with paint and put in some accessories, and sometimes other cultures also we get to see people wearing masks and then dancing, performing dancers. In Bhutan, they have their annual festival where they wear masks and dance in the streets. And so this is how, like, entertainment industry goes on. So the mask is symbolic of entertainment, on stage entertainment or street entertainment. So all these are actually done by performers, and these performers are the artists. They are the music makers. They make the music for us. What is this music? Music here stands for entertainment. So whether it is through acting or dramatics, whether it is through singing or by playing instruments, or maybe another kind of artist may be doing some kind of painting, drawing, sketches, any kind of performing art, and any kind of fine art, and even, in general, whatever brings out the creativity and the talent of an individual, which entertains the public, which entertains the masses, that is what this poem is trying to celebrate. So the music makers are not simply the ones who play music. They include all these types of artists who are part of show business and who actually entertain us. So now let us see the poem. On your screen you can see an ode or a fragment composed in octets. That means each stanza has 8 lines. So that is what it stands for. Now, this ode is alluded to a high range of artistic expressions, including orchestras, feature films, rock and pop bands. Even the line, "We are the music makers and we are the dreamers of dreams," was played at the 89th Academy Awards in Memoriam section. For further cultural references, you can also refer to the net. You can also visit Wikipedia. So, the form and language of this ode, it's written in stanza form, and there are 8 syllable lines. The rhyme scheme is A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B. So how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 total. 8 lines. Each alternate line rhymes with the other line. That means the first line rhymes with the third, second line rhymes with the fourth. So when you read the text, you will see it is like that. And the second stanza, of course, there is a variation. The rhyme scheme becomes A, A, B, B, C, D, C, D. That means first 2 lines rhyme with each other, second set of 2 lines rhyme with each other. Then the third set of 2 lines don't rhyme, C, D, and the fourth set of 2 lines again are C, D. So these are the essential aspects of the poem. Now, we will try to understand the text of the poem, but before that, let's see what we have on the screen. The theme of the poem, it celebrates the power of art and artist, and it also celebrates the fact that art is immortal. Imagine Mona Lisa, painted by Leonardo da Vinci so many years ago, is still one of the greatest attractions for art lovers who visit Paris and who go to the Louvre Museum to see this art form or this painting. So the artist is long gone, but his art lives on. So this is how Michelangelo's paintings inside the Sistine Chapel, if you go to Rome and if you go to the Vatican, then you will see there is this Sistine Chapel and inside St. Peter's Basilica. So the ceiling and the walls of the Sistine Chapel are painted with fresco paintings, and these were done by Michelangelo, the famous artist of yesteryears, Michelangelo. and you can still see the scenes of the Holy Bible painted in the ceiling and on the walls of the Sistine Chapel, though Michelangelo is dead and long gone. So that is how art is immortal, it lives on. So that is what this poem is trying to celebrate. So literary devices used in the poem, you have alliteration, that means you have words, successive words in a single line or successive lines which begin with the same alphabet. So you will get examples of alliteration in this poem. For example, music makers, M. See, music starts with M followed by makers, which is also starting with M. Dreamers of dreams, D and D. You can see successive words in the same line beginning with the same alphabet. So these are the alliterations used, and you can see the background, this colorful background where you can see the musicians. We started off with the mask, and that is for play acting, and then you have all sorts of musicians here. Then you have the artist with the easel and the canvas. He's standing in front of the easel and the canvas, and he's doing some painting. So you have the guitarist, you have the saxophonist, you have the trumpet player. So you have so many types of artists. So the key points of the poem on your screen right now: the poem is a celebration of the music makers and dreamers of dreams, artists of various forms who have fashioned the world through their art. Second point, the artists who forsake the world and wander by lonely places and are viewed as weird. Artists are generally a bit different in their mindset. So normal people will probably consider them to be mad or eccentric, but they are not. They could be found wandering in lonely places because they are looking for artistic inspiration, which ordinary people will not be able to understand. So they are considered weird, but they are not weird. Okay? And then they are in fact the ones who shape and shake the world. So through their art form, they actually shape the world, and they also give a jerk to the world. The world shakes because of what they create, what they present. The glory of empires and the fame of ancient cities, there is reference to some ancient cities in the poem we will be reading, rests in the immortal lines of the poets. An ambitious man's ability to capture power is rivaled by poets whose craft can bring down empires. And then the next point, the ancient cities of Nineveh and Babel were built by the varying moods of the poets and their craft. Their destruction was triggered by the prophecy of the worth of a new world made by the artists, because each age is a dream that is dying or one that is coming to birth. So that is about the poem. Now let's move on to the text of the poem. So here on your screen we have the actual fragmented text which is part of your syllabus, and let us try to do this now line by line. So the first stanza: we are the music makers and we are the dreamers of dreams, wandering by lone sea breakers and sitting by desolate streams, world losers and world forsakers, on whom the pale moon gleams, yet we are the movers and shakers of the world forever it seems. So in this we can see that the poet is making a straightforward appeal to the artists across different realms, and he's calling them the music makers or the dreamers of dreams. Since it avoids mention of a particular art form, it applies equally to artists across the globe, across different segments. Like I told you in the beginning, all types of artists are involved or included in this, and thus the massive appeal. So this poem gives art an encompassing definition. So The poet says, wandering by lone sea breakers and sitting by desolate streams. So in these lines, the poet describes the artists and their soul searching. How they wander alone by sea breakers. What are sea breakers? Waves of the sea that come and break or crash upon the seashore. And they sit by the desolate streams. Sometimes artists wander into the wilderness and sit by lonely streams of water. Nobody's around, just a stream of water flowing past, and they just sit on its bank and they are lost in their thoughts. The poet is actually trying to focus on the desolation of spirits of these artists. See, they have a kind of painful feeling inside their hearts that actually shapes up their creativity, which is worth such admiration. So then he says, world losers and world forsakers. World losers, world forsakers, on whom the pale moon gleams. So here the poet builds upon the travails that these artists go through. He calls them world losers and world forsakers. This highlights the difficult life that the artists have to lead to shape up their creation. Often it gets difficult to survive solely on their art. Artists are generally poor financially. For the sake of art, they give their all, their entire lives, but they are never rich. They are never rich. Those who truly appreciate art maybe sometimes pay them, but that is not enough. So the artists have to sacrifice a lot. So it's very difficult for them to survive solely on their art. The pale moon points to the little or very small, very minimum amount of money by means of which they have managed to survive, which they gain from their art. They are paid poorly. They earn very less, but they don't give up art. They struggle to survive, but their creativity continues. So this actually strikes chords with most of the artists who look for a patron for their art in absence of a hefty inheritance or good fortune. Yet we are the movers and shakers of the world forever, it seems. Despite that, the poet says these artists are the movers and shakers of the world. So by the phrase, he means that someone who colors outside the lines, people who show the world a face outside the societal norms and ethos, people who are capable of moving and shaking the world and possibly building a new one. Those who bring dynamicity to an otherwise static world. So the artists, they wander alone by the seashores, or sometimes sit and contemplate on isolated streams. Society considers them to be losers, forsakers, because they remain aloof. They do not engage themselves in worldly pursuits like others. They don't run after money, wealth, fortune. But even if they stay aloof from the society, they are the movers and shakers in the real sense. Through their art, whether it is music or painting or writing, even an author or a poet is a music maker or an artist. By means of all these art forms, they actually stir the world. Their powerful art rebels against the status quo to bring about a change in the world order, in the society, in the human society. So now we move to the next stanza, the second stanza. With wonderful deathless ditties, we build up the world's great cities, and out of a fabulous story, we fashion an empire's glory. Notice the rhyme scheme has changed. Ditties, cities, AA. Then story, glory, BB. And then one man with a dream at pleasure shall go forth and conquer a crown. And 3 with a new song's measure can trample an empire down. So you see pleasure, measure, C, and then crown D, and then measure C, and then empire down D. So it is different rhyme scheme in the second stanza. So with wonderful deathless ditties, what does the poet mean to say? In this stanza, the poet is highlighting the effects of the artistry on the world. The wonderful, immortal, deathless means immortal, songs created by the artists are capable of building the world's great cities. They are capable of building and rebuilding new cities, new settlements, new civilizations. So, artists can actually, through their creativity, build such things. So, in the second stanza, the poet draws our attention to the powerful creations of several artists. A poet or a musician can build up the world's great cities in his wonderful everlasting songs. Similarly, a writer's story, one who is a writer is also an artist, can fabulously give shape to an empire and its glory. Through his writings, a writer can give man the liberty to dream at pleasure and to move forward to conquer a crown. At the same time, a songwriter can give another man the freedom to bring about a revolution and bring the downfall of an empire. Imagine all those patriotic song composers during the freedom struggle. Kadam Kadam Bada Hai Ja, for example. These were inspirational patriotic songs which inspired the freedom fighters. The songs worked like challenges, as if these songwriters who had written such songs were trying to throw a challenge to the freedom fighters that if you can march, you can finally reach the Red Fort and pull down the Union Jack and raise or hoist the tricolor, and India will achieve its freedom. So you see, songs had a tremendous impact over the ages in different countries wherever there was freedom struggle against colonial rule. So that is what the poet is trying to say. Okay. So similarly, like out of a fabulous story, we fashion an empire's glory. So out of a fabulous or mythic story, the artists can fashion a glorious empire. This means that the fantasy that comes to an artist's mind can shape up things he builds. It is, after all, the poems, stories, songs, and paintings and other art forms that actually mark the glory of a civilization. We often talk about the artistic height of an empire to judge its greatness. So, when they dug up Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, they found those carvings, seals. So many artistic objects were found in the relics, in the remains of the Mohenjo-daro and Harappan Empire. And from that, the historians could make an assessment of how great a civilization it used to be, the Indus Valley civilization. So, today also, we have tourism industry all over the world. One of the highest foreign exchange earning industry, the tourism industry. Why do tourists visit different countries? They just want to go and see those places where historical monuments and relics and remains speak volumes about the past glory and culture of a particular civilization which is now no more. So the artists' art forms have remained, and that's why we admire the Taj Mahal or Humayun's tomb or Buland Darwaza or even the Meenakshi temple and many, many more. The Iron Pillar, the Qutub Minar. Okay, these are all, architecture. The exceptional architectural feats achieved by those artists of yesteryears who took the chisel and hammer and cut through stones to give the stones the shape of temples and make all those carvings on the walls and the pillars. Think about the paintings of Ajanta caves and the carvings in the Ellora caves. Some of you might have seen, gone there already. So exceptional. And art as an evidence of what life used to be in the past has always been appreciated by historians. So, whatever an artist creates speaks volumes about an empire's glory. So, that is what is being said here. Then he says, one man with a dream at pleasure shall go forth and conquer a crown, and three with a new song's measure can trample an empire down. So the poet further says that one man with a dream and sufficient opportunity or pleasure at hand can give that dream a concrete structure. He can shape his dream into reality. He is the one who shall go ahead. He is the one who will conquer a crown. So, this is what is being suggested. So, now we move on to the next. So, he says that if a writer through his writings can give man the liberty to dream at pleasure and to move forward to conquer a crown, at the same time even a songwriter can give another man the same kind of freedom to bring about a revolution and bring about the downfall of an empire. So those inspiring patriotic songs brought about the downfall of the British Empire in India. So you can say, you can put it like that, you can understand it like that. So coming to the third stanza. We in the ages lying in the buried past of the earth built Nineveh with our sighings and Babel itself with our mirth, and overthrew them with prophesying to the old of the new world's worth. For each age is a dream that is dying or one that is coming to birth. Poet is now making an allusion or alluding to or referring to the biblical cities of Nineveh and Babel. These were not real, but are mentioned in the Holy Bible, suggesting the idea of art as an almost divine creation that in itself creates divinity. Nineveh was the ancient flourishing capital of the Assyrian Empire, which came to ruins and was never rebuilt. The people of Babel sought to make a tower so high that it would reach heaven. It is believed that since humans wanted to claim equality with God by building such a tall, proud symbol of their unity and strength, God punished them. God punished them by giving them different languages so that there should be no unity among humans. And look at the world now. Do we have unity? We have different cultures. We speak different languages. We have different food habits. And though we stay together in this world, we still have our differences, and that's the reason why you have border disputes. You have people hating each other, the blacks against the whites and the whites against the blacks. You have religious differences, communal riots. So many things are happening around us in this world. So it was all because God punished the human race. Before this attempt was made, according to the Holy Bible, all human beings spoke the same language, but God punished and separated, isolated different groups of humans, and that is how, so that they could not communicate with one another and were not able to build the tower. So the poet actually believes that in the ancient times that now lie hidden in the history of the earth, when the artists were distressed, They built a Nineveh, and then they were filled with joy. They rose up a Babel. They started building the Babel. So this Nineveh and Babel are symbols of human rise and fall. They reflect the artist's power to create and destroy the same piece of art. So, then see here the artists were present in all the ages, in the ages lying. In the past, the artists built the ancient city of Nineveh, which was abandoned in 612 BC. In the buried past, sighing probably means the torture these enslaved people received to build the buildings, streets, and all. Again, Babel or Babylon was created with mirth. Babel refers to Babylon, with the artists like the architects and sculptors working together happily. So, in this way, in the past, these structures were built, but now those structures are not to be found anywhere. The remains are also gone. So, the artists are capable of overthrowing the old world with their prophecy of a new world. According to him, each age is the result of dream of these artists. This is again replaced by another dream of their own. So their dream is capable of replacing themselves to give birth to a new dream of a new modern world. So that is what this poem is all about. The utopia of the old world is then deconstructed by prophesying the new world's birth. That means the old world order is destroyed because there is this prophecy or foretelling of the future world, that it is going to be better. So it is only an artist, a musician, a painter, a poet, a writer who can create something only to destroy it for a better and worthy future. Thus, dreams, aspirations die in each era so that new dreams and new aspirations can come to life. So now all you need to do is go through the theme of the poem. In your workbook it is given as transformative power of art. You can go through the form and structure. You have to understand why this poem is called an ode. So that is also explained clearly in your workbook. Go through the figures of speech, alliteration, allusion, and there are some solved. There is one solved answer and a few questions with hints provided for the answers, which you must prepare for your boards. So with that, we come to the end of the explanation of this wonderful poem. We are the Music Makers, an ode by a famous British poet of Irish origin, whose photograph you can see on your screen right now. We are the Music Makers, written by